We're going to present and discuss about international case studies. So I welcome you all to this very, very interesting session and very interesting discussion today. We have three presentations to attend. Each of them is going to last around 15 minutes, and then we have the pleasure to invite Maria Vasilako, who is going to comment on the three case studies. So I will briefly present the first speaker. It is Verena Mörkl. Thank you very much for coming here. Verena Mörkl and Christoph Mörkl, who is over there, have founded SUPERBLOCK in Vienna in 2003. SUPERBLOCK deals with issues on architecture and urban planning. They try to find answers through interdisciplinary teams and to rephrase the questions to find complex and extensive approaches. SUPERBLOCK is one part of the team that is running the non-profit district service agency Gebietsbetreuung Urban Renewal Group for a number of districts of Vienna, and this is the experience that they are going to share with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation and the possibility to present our work. Actually, I'm not going to talk about our work as with the Gebietsbetreuung, but I'm talking about a project which we designed, a competition which we won in 2016, and we worked together there with the Urban Renewal Office from another district of Vienna, but it shows how it works, how urban planning process is working in Vienna. Actually, the name SUPERBLOCK goes back to a housing program which was adopted in Vienna during the interwar period of the last century. So the SUPERBLOCKs in Vienna, they're really famous. They are big housing buildings owned by the city of Vienna. And the most famous one is Karl-Marx-Hof. I don't know if you know it, but this one is as well a house which the city is very proud of. So as you mentioned, our office was founded in 2003, and we're working a lot on subsidized housing in Vienna because it's a really big focus the city has, and we are also working on urban planning. To explain how urban development works in Vienna, it is important to understand how Vienna deals with housing, or with the housing problem every growing city has. Vienna is growing rapidly since 25 years, so each year the amount of 30,000 to 50,000 people are moving to Vienna, so this is quite a rapid growth. And still there are about 60% of the Viennese people living in subsidized housing or social flats owned by the city. And as Vienna is a very rich city, this is quite a huge amount of people living in subsidized housing. So this keeps the rent of all the free financed buildings very low as well. So this is important to have in mind if we are talking about urban planning. So if we convert green land to building land, it's mandatory to have a mix of subsidized and free financed housing there. So it's not allowed to just build a free financed high topic residential area. So I think this is really important. The second thing is that it is mandatory to start a comprehensive participatory process during the conversion, so to keep the neighborhood, to keep them updated and to keep them aware of what is happening in their neighborhood. So I will introduce you to Eurogate, which was a competition we won in 2016. It's now called the Village of the Third District. It's a very strange name, we think, because Eurogate was a little bit more fluent for us. but it's a very big project. Actually, it is about 250 square meters of residential area there. We are surrounded by very highly frequented roads. There are a lot of cars that you can see on the south of the plan. There is a highway passing where about 100,000 cars a day pass by. So it's located very centrally in Vienna. It's not in the outskirts, but it's in the very inner city. And the key facts, as I mentioned, is we built there approximately about 2,000 dwellings, of which 800 are subsidized, another 200 are affordable, and another 1,000 are free financed. So we have about 35,000 commercial and non-residential uses. We have 2 schools, 2 kindergartens there, so about 25 square meters social infrastructure. And in the middle of it all, we have 2,000 square meters public park, which is financed by the non-profit, by the organizations building the flats there and then open to the public. So it's a kind of public-private partnership there. So we, as I mentioned before, the area is surrounded by roads with heavy traffic. We didn't want to orientate any dwellings or flats, any windows to the public roads. But on the other hand, we want just to have a lively area there. We didn't want to create any dead spaces. So we put, as you can see in front, such a 2-story high structure in front of the Gürtel, in front of this highway, and we settled some living and some working structure there. So we said that this extremely high frequency of the road could be a potential for startups, for young professionals, for people who need some not perfect space, but any affordable space to start their commerce. So this structure, which was a big discussion with the landlords, because in the beginning they didn't want to construct it. Right now it's being constructed, and I think it's really a cool thing, because they're trying to find young people settling there, and it is a kind of topic which stands for the entire urban development. The second focus is that we try to use a sensible use of the topographical problem we found there, because we have a difference up to 15 meters from north to south. So we decided to terrace the site and to create like an island, like a sharp edge where all the ground floor use can find place, such as community spaces or entrances, shops, restaurants, etc., and which forms a clear cut to the public park. So I think it's about borders inside, outside of courtyards, private and public use of spaces. And in the center of it all lies this big park. We designed a park where the edge of the park meanders through the site. So we maximized the park edge, and we put all the high-rise buildings there. So we maximized the flats. They are directly orientated to the park. It is a quite elegant way of dealing with the problem. But if you keep in mind that half of these houses are still social housing, and the half of the high-rise as well are social housing projects, we found it very smart to do it that way. The non-residential use we just pushed towards the road with the heavy traffics. So they should provide the frequent and the isolation of the traffic, and keep the inside of the development just silent and green. And yeah. We did the zoning plan, so in total this is about 18 sites there. We did the zoning plan for the sites, and we also provided a book with the urban guidelines. We did this because afterwards every site was a competition, and we handed these urban guidelines to the architects designing or handing in their entries for the competitions. So there was the things that seemed important for us just to be transported to the architects designing after we did the urban planning. So this is the results of the competition. The competitions, they took about 3 years. We have been in the jury, as well as the city of Vienna was in the jury, as well as the landowners. So we were a big jury. It was quite funny to discuss every project. The landowners, they accompanied this competition with a really huge publicity work. So we tried to be very transparent to the people living there, what was going on there and why a project won the competition. And on the other hand, it was really important for us to keep the level that high. So I think the result there is really an outstanding piece of urban development, because we have not only the houses itself as a really high architectural level, but also the public space and the deal with green space. So the space between the houses is important too. So this is the jury. We made a huge press conference and everything, so it's quite funny. And it has a quite huge impact in Vienna, the project. The participation process, it started years ago, before the urban competition started. So I think this is important too, that the city of Vienna first collected the wishes and needs and suggestions from the citizens living there, and let it flow into the tender for the urban competition. So it was, when we started to focus on this competition, we had a book from the needs and the wishes that the citizens living there have. So I think this is also important to keep in mind, that you have to start discussing things before you start a competition. Yeah. And the area management is looking after this quarter since 6 years now. So they are regularly on site with an info point, you can see here. And they produce documents, and they declare and communicate the planning, and they communicate the implementation process. And I think this is very important, because for us professionals, it's easy to read a plan and it's easy to look at a model, but if you're a layman, it's not that easy to understand what is going on. And they are really doing a great work, and they are easing our work there as well, on the other hand. And yeah, they're also organizing regular on-site meetings. They're organizing guiding tours, as you can see on the pictures. They are providing information about accessibility. They are providing information about the time scales from the construction, because to construct such a huge quarter, it's changing every time. You know, you say we are going to start working in 2025, and then it's skipping 2 years. And they are just keeping this information to the people living there. why there is a delay or why it is like this now. And so I think this is really, really important. One of the results of the works from this district management was the neighborhood garden. So we had a big neighborhood garden, which was there before we started the construction. And the neighborhood garden will be there at the end of the completion. So the neighborhood garden has to move to several sites because it's not possible to have the neighborhood garden on the construction site. So there you can see pictures about the moving. So they're moving the sheds, they're moving the plants, they're moving everything. But they are still there, and they will be staying there. So I think this is important too, that we always kept the communication to the neighbors already living there. At the moment, the streets are being built there. So this is an aerial view. We have also, as you discussed before, we have also an alternative heating there. So at the moment, about 500 boreholes, of which one is 150 meters deep, are drilled in the area underneath the park. And these are going to supply the homes with heat from the ground in winter by the means of heat pump, and cool the ceilings in the buildings in summer on the means of a regenerating system. And down on the below you can see such a deep drill. So this is quite cool to see how they are providing alternative energy there. And the last picture is the construction site we are doing there. So we are one of these 18th projects there in the middle of the urban development. Hopefully this is how it looks like in 2026. And yeah, I'm finished with the project.
Thank you very much, Verena, for this very interesting presentation and for presenting a quite structured way of participation that links to housing, to urban development, to urban planning, and also to this quarter management, district management. Perhaps we will have the time to discuss about it a bit more later, and also for mentioning how important it is to start before the competitions, to start very early and to try to establish networks of residents and of some kind of new life there beforehand. Thank you very much. Okay, we will go on with the second presentation by Alexandra Gomes. Alexandra coordinates spatial analysis at LSE Cities, London School of Economics, and also tutors at UCL Bartlett School of Planning. Her research expertise spans urbanization topics such as socio-spatial analysis, policy inequalities, health, mobility, public spaces, scentscapes, and visual communication, with extensive experience in diverse global contexts. Okay. Is it working? Okay.
Sorry for the IT. So I'm here to present a study that I did with a team. So I've added the name of all those who collaborated and co-worked with me and that were essential for this to happen. And it's about turning urban challenges into a game. And it's called Q8scapes because it's based on Q8 for a more inclusive urban future. So for those who don't know Q8, Q8 was a small town, mostly linked to fishery. And in around the 50s, they found out that they had a lot of oil, and they demolished completely the old town. And they started building a car-centric city. So they started building the major roads, and the city followed the major roads and started growing and sprawling outwards. And so there's a couple of challenges when we look into Q8. One is the sprawl. The other one is the demographics. So we talk about Q8, and Q8 is has a population of around 4 million and a half, but 2/3 of the population are non-Q80s, while 1/3 of the population is Q80. The Q80s live in the low densities, as you see on the right, and 99% of Q80s drive a car, and 1% has organized motor vehicles. So we assume that it's taxis. The non-Q80 population lives in higher densities and mid-rise buildings, and a big percentage of those that demographic use public transport, and 44% private vehicles. But a lot of those private vehicles are linked to work, and so are they there doing logistics, linked to shops, or working for Q80 population as drivers. Because there's a limit of income. So you have to have an income above a particular amount of money to be able to be a driver in Q8. So this poses different challenges for the two demographic groups, and I'm going to talk about them. The main challenge that we found out in terms of this project is the unfulfilled potential of streets as a public space in Q8. So we looked into what are the planning, urban design, and behavioral factors that contribute to public space use in Q8, or to the non-use of public space in Q8, depends on how you look into it. So there's the car-centric development. There's the fact that there's different demographics, and these different demographics use public space in different ways. There's the extreme heat, but we looked into warmer and hotter season, and we didn't see differences between those two different seasons. And there's a very harsh top-down planning and management, and there's no participation. And there's other factors that we didn't pick up, like cultural, religious, but we didn't look into those. So we looked into two neighborhoods that are more or less at the same distance from the CBD. They're both residential, although one, Salmia, has higher densities and higher mixed use because it's dominantly non-Q80. And Cortuba, which is villa type, and we're talking about villas that are around 1,000 square meters plots, and residential areas for Q80s. A lot of these villas, they have the family living there and staff living there. So the challenge is, okay, so are people using public space? Are they not using public space? And we've realized that in Salmia, the dominantly non-Q80 neighborhood, 70% of all activities that exist in public space are social activities. While in Cortuba, the dominantly Q80 neighborhood, only 30% of the activities are social. So most of the activities are functional. People going to their cars, people making a phone call while waiting for someone. But who uses public space? So both areas are dominantly used by male working age population, dominantly non-Q80. Similar levels of use in both warmer and cooler seasons, and of course we didn't look into extreme heat. We are not expecting people to use public space in extreme heat, but there's 8 months of good weather. But of course, even if you have 25 degrees or 26, like in here in Athens, if you don't have shade, areas, if you don't have seating elements, if you don't have a toilet or a fountain to drink some water, you're not using public space. So we saw that only those who didn't have other spaces to socialize, like the workers, those are the only ones that use public space. We've also looked into, so what is public space? And while in European cities, public space includes streets, in Kuwait, streets are for cars. So we talked about reusing parking areas, and in Salmiya, for example, parking spaces represent 20% of the whole study area, and in Cordoba represents 25%. So this is looking into the amount of area dedicated to parking against the amount of area dedicated to other uses. And in Cordoba, parking areas already surpass 160% the total housing footprint. So there's more areas for cars than areas for buildings themselves. And as you can see in the photo, the shaded areas are for cars. They're not there for people, to protect people from the heat. Because of this, because the streets are dedicated to cars, there's also issues of street safety. In both areas, there's an annexation of pavement for car parking, and you can see below, in the photo below, there's no sidewalk. The sidewalk is occupied and it's privatized by the residents, and they either have the cars in the shade or they plant vegetation and flowers, and they force people to walk in the road rather than walking in the pavement. And of course, for themselves, they get out of their house and they have the car in the shade in front of their house. So they don't walk, they don't even walk in the streets. Which has a lot of issues because Kuwait is one of the countries with higher levels of diabetes, obesity, and pollution, because a lot of the Kuwaitis use a car in their daily activity. So that means that there's lack of pedestrian infrastructure, there's no zebra crossings, there's no pedestrian traffic lights because people don't walk, Kuwaitis don't walk. There's the non-Kuwaitis walk. And wayfinding or speed limit signs are also not existing. So the few sidewalks that we saw very close to pocket parks, they have poor maintenance and they discourage people to walk, leading to higher levels of pollution, accidents, and obesity. So we have two different issues. We have the Kuwaitis that even if they want to walk, they're kind of led to drive because the streets are not accommodating walkability. And we have the non-Kuwaitis that have no alternative but to walk in the sun and in poorly maintained areas. So we looked into public space, we looked into who's using it, who's not using it, what are they doing that, or why are they not using it, how can we improve it, how can we make it more attractive. And then, of course, all these process led to do a report for policymakers and academic papers. But then we all know that, well, I guess most people who read our papers and our reports already agree with us. So how can we change the mind of those who plan for us and that plan for, in this case, to Kuwait? So we decided luckily there was some leftover money from the project, and then we were free to do invest in an impact and knowledge exchange and impact game. So we wanted to think the game, think about for whom and with whom should we plan this public space, at what level and scale should we look into or plan for, what are the challenges, and if people wanted to use the cards for participatory or in teaching, we wanted the cards also to have a nudge, so a question that allows people to be free and discuss this topic and give us other ideas of how to approach public space. So we created this game. The game is available online. It's translated to Arabic so that we reach the most people that we can. It's dedicated to children, because we thought it's very hard to change mentalities of people who are now in power, but maybe if we invest in changing the new generation, we can change mentalities, but also children play with parents, so who knows, that leads to something. But also the cards, because the team couldn't decide, is this just a game or is this a participatory tool? So we decided to do a card game that would adapt to everything. So it can be adapted to teaching as a participatory tool, but also essentially a game. So we wanted essentially, with these cards that are presented here, we have areas, we have characters. Each character has a bio and its own needs. We have tools that can help that particular character or that particular area. We have actions, which are challenges that you have to overcome and makes kids and their parents think about what's going on in the city. And then we have the nudge cards that asks the questions. So we wanted people, and Q80s in particular, to connect with their own environment, to understand who's invisible. A lot of the Q80s don't understand that there's cleaners every day in their streets, that their taxi driver has no time to go and eat and has no money to eat anywhere, or has no public toilets to go if they're waiting for them. So we also wanted Q80s to engage with the different demographics, to learn from other people's experiences. So that we created different characters with different bios so that they could create an engagement and understand other people's needs. And of course, encourage divergent thinking, alerting for new ideas and new opportunities for public space in Q8. So we created a video. If we have time, I'll show it in the end. But along with the video and the cards and the translation of the cards, we did a set of events in Q8. And for example, Earth event, they basically tested our cards and they said, well, when we play your cards and kids play your cards, all they want is to win. They're not thinking about who's matching with and why are they, if these are the cleaners or it's like, we want to match the cards. We're not looking and reading the bios. So we asked the group to help us hack the rules and create rules that could engage kids and children, even adults, with the game in a different way. But in order to do that, we also asked them to reflect, to pick up a card, and then use that card, embrace that character, go to public space, and understand, do you feel comfortable if you were that character? What's going on in public space for you? So this is just an example of young Jana, who likes to play football. And when the group went to public space and to a park in particular, it realized that it was only boys playing football. So if they were young Jana, they would not be able to be in the park and play football. And they thought, we never thought about this, because we are not young girls, we are not interested in playing football, but it's really important to think about what other people need. And is the space, for example, working for all demographic groups, for everyone that needs to use the space, what was missing for Jana, and was it positive or negative? And other groups did with other characters. So we've learned a lot about this experience, and we discussed a lot of the new ideas for regulations, but we also had an event with children, young children, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, teenagers. And in this event, we didn't want to force the children to play the game immediately. We want them to reflect about the streets before they play the game so that they could understand why we did the game. So we asked them, how did you get here, by car or public transport? They all came by car. Where do you walk more, street or shopping mall? A lot of kids raised their hands and they said shopping mall because it's so comfortable. And to be honest, it is more comfortable than the streets. But then what surprised us is what is missing in Q8 streets. And they all drew on a piece of A4 paper, and they missed the animals, they missed the trees, and they missed random encounters. That was the dominant answer from all these kids. And then they played the game. And then we thought maybe now they engage a bit more with the game. But that's a question for the future. So because we couldn't, with the event we had with Earth, we ended up not creating rules. We had a lot of ideas, and we are all quite busy. We decided, why not pick up on some of these ideas and write a call that could interest people to create new rules that finally force players to engage with the individuals, to work collaboratively, and to think about negotiation. So we had a call, we had one winner and a second place, and this is just an example of one of the new rules that we have, where instead of us playing the same way, we have a mayor with particular interests and citizens with other interests, and there's a period of negotiation with the game and trying to match interests with the cards and in the game. So I don't know if I have time to show the video. So the game is available online. It has been used in teaching too, in architecture, where they picked up again one card and designed a particular building, thinking of the experience of that particular character, and hopefully will be used in planning and in the future.
Q8scapes is a game of cards contextualized in Q8, aiming at encouraging players to think about the diversity of people that use Q8's public space, along with physical and social tools that can improve the use of these spaces.
We created 5 types of cards. The area cards represent the spaces you need to improve. With these cards, the player can get to know 2 Kuwaiti neighborhoods, their built form, streets, and open spaces, with all the challenges and opportunities for their use.
The tool cards include physical and social tools, so that you can recognize and use urban design, planning and mobility tools, as well as social and community devices that can promote engagement with friends and neighbors.
With the character cards, you will try to help one of the many characters using public space in Kuwait, including a variety of ethnicities, age groups, gender, or a wheelchair user.
The action cards were developed to add more excitement to the game, while highlighting some of the key challenges of Kuwait, such as traffic and pollution.
Finally, the nudge cards, a special set of cards created to make you reflect on tools that can promote behavioral changes.
Start by distributing area and character cards and try to get 5 tools that can improve your area and your character's routine.
Think of how you can use your action cards to help you or to challenge the other players.
And reflect on how some tools might influence personal behavior with the nudge cards.
If you are the first to match 5 tools with your area and character, you win.
Just follow the instructions of the game or adapt them to your own strategy.
It's an easy and fast game created for children to play, but still complex enough for adults.
Created to make you think and understand about places and people while having fun.
So this is the set of cards. We printed around 800 that we distributed in Q8. And hopefully, I don't know if we'll have a short-term impact, but hopefully at least a medium, long-term impact in how Q8 is managed and public space is used. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, for this presentation and for introducing the ideas of participation in a context that seems maybe impossible when you start attending the presentation, and for the links of participation with public space, with mobility issues, and also with different tools like a game with cards. And also with these tests, when you test it with focus groups and have their feedback and then change it again, invent new rules. Thank you very much. We will come back on the discussion. And let's invite Maria Vasilakou to start the comparative analysis of the 3 so different cases. So Maria Vasilakou is a consultant in sustainable urban development and founder of the Vienna Solutions. Yes, please. And she's the deputy vice mayor of Vienna, so she has lots of experience from different fields. Was. So let's start with, let's say, a quick comment on the 3 presentations, and then we will open the floor to the audience, okay? Thank you very much.
So, thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon, everybody. Wow, that is a task. So I have been writing a lot, and let me start with what a fascinating journey, starting in Vienna, which is the capital city of social housing, and ending in the, let's say, one of the most horrible versions of neoliberal residential development in Cairo, standing as an example of what's happening in many parts of the world in the so-called global south. And as we were in Athens, I was just asking myself, where are we here? Right? I tend to actually count Athens to the global south, to be honest. But I think that if we look into it a little bit deeper, we might find out that it's somewhere in between. It's somewhere in the crossroads right now. And let's say that the discussion is in which direction will it move from now on. Second thought that I had is, as always, we need to ask ourselves, in terms of decisions of urban development, who has the benefit and who takes the disadvantages. And before looking a little bit into the details of the different presentations, the next thing that came to my mind while listening was that actually, please don't quote me on this publicly, middle class is our problem, and middle class is the only key, the only solution, the only way we could actually tackle the problem. So they're the problem and the solution at the same time. And by this, I refer to their mindset, I refer to the way they perceive a happy life, I refer to the way they perceive safety, I refer to the way they actually perceive what is a good city, which, by the way, leads them exactly to the city that makes them unhappy, unhealthy, unsafe, and everything else. So now looking and getting into a little bit into deeper detail, let's put it this way, the next thoughts that I had is that in the end, actually it's all about public space. Well, yes, it's not only about public space, okay? I think that the very impressive example of Cairo shows that it is also about money. It's about big money. It's about, again, big neoliberal residential development and the way this is being put forward, although actually if we look into the data of the market, it doesn't work that well either. But yet it keeps on going. But it's also about what it does with public space. It's also about the street and the way the street should be functioning as a place for life. I mean, where can urban life take place if not on the street? And how it doesn't function this way. And it's about walkability, most probably as one indicator of life quality in a city. So walkability has a lot to do with existence of infrastructure. Let me name just two very crucial things. One would be pavements, right? Which, by the way, Kuwait, they don't exist. They simply don't exist. The second thing would be greening and shading. So shading, let's put it this way, as two very basic infrastructures that would actually help you to take the decision to go for a walk. By the way, again, Athens, somewhere in the crossroads, because we have the pavements, but they're for the cars, and people walk on the street. But they do walk in Athens. So again, if we take this as an indicator of life quality, we could say somewhere in the middle, but it can get better. And now, the next thoughts I had are, first of all, it was today about the power of data. And we've seen it in two very different examples. First of all, the typical LSE analysis of gathering data and comparing and showing very clearly who lives where and how. But hey, now that was very impressive what Ahmed has shown us with the maps. I mean, that was really a wow. I wouldn't want to have these maps for Athens though, because if you show these maps for Athens, then middle class will say, oh, this is where we're going to be buying land next, right? I would love to have them perhaps, I mean, I'm a little bit cynical, but I'm just trying to say that I would like to have them in Athens more showing example given where are gardens and where not. Where do we have pavements that are made for walking and where not? I would like them actually to be showing the qualities of public space. And I think this would also be a wow. And perhaps I would like to have them for air quality in Athens, just to give you another example. I would like to have them for congestion. And then look into congested streets and who lives there, and who works there, and how much do they earn. So I would love to have them to show these things, because I think that these would actually raise awareness a lot. Then it was, of course, about gamification as a means forward. Again, raising awareness and activating community. And that takes me from Alexandra to Verena, where it was actually all about, first of all, governance. So you need to have a framework for long-term, regular, and standardized participatory processes in order to achieve the results that Verena has been talking about, which is the case in Vienna. And we can look a little bit later, deeper into it, what this framework looks like and what the governance behind it looks like. But let me give you one example that I know, because I have the privilege of knowing her for quite a while now. Like in Vienna, I was thinking, of the cards and what Alexandra has shown us, and then I was thinking of Vienna and the action you did with children dressing up as trees and standing on the street where trees could be, just to give you an example, okay, of how, what different approaches may be that more or less lead to the same, are also about awareness and lead more or less to the same results. And then, summing it up, what Verena was showing, actually looking all the way through long-term activation and community involvement processes, again, with a very specific set of rules and governance behind them, that actually help you overcome resistance of middle class, also in wealthy, healthy Vienna, against social housing, which is the case there, and arriving at results that are well accepted. But these results, again, were creating together the village at the heart of the city, the urban village at the heart of the city, a very dense urban village at the heart of the city. And again, we land into qualities of public space and open spaces and walkability and enjoying outdoor life. So it's about raising awareness, it's about activating community and involving, it's about governance, and it's about how to have specific standards for long-term involvement processes. And yes, it's about middle class. As I said in the beginning, the problem and the only solution. That would be my comment. And looking very much forward to hear what your approaches are.
Thank you very much, Maria, for summing up the previous discussion and for highlighting topics that are of particular relevance to today's panel. So we have some more time for questions, so we will open the floor to you. We can collect the first round of questions. Please just say your name so that and do we need a microphone? Or, oh.
Thank you for the presentations, and I'm also I'll make a quick point and then a question for all of you. Just a reflection also towards the end of the 2 days, and following a little bit about this reasoning around the middle classes. I am increasingly unhappy with how in the sphere of urban planning development we talk about neoliberalism, not because it wasn't helpful, but because of, is it saying enough about different cases? Is it about the neoliberalism of the 15-minute city concept in Paris? Is it about the fact that in the UK, very neoliberal country historically, completely rejected it? Now the UK is trying to promote again to win again elections, this car ownership idea of let's scrap green policies, etc., etc. Is it neoliberalism in Kuwait or Cairo? I don't know anymore. And I think that it was a good 2 or 3 decades of neoliberalism we had. Now we have deglobalization, complex problems. The environmental crisis is really hitting everybody. So there are like lots of different dynamics in different contexts. So my question to you is, in your projects, in your experiences, which I think for me is the key a little bit to have more room for maneuver, is how do you relate with the state, the local municipality, the city? What are the very specific articulations and complexities in that relationship between community of practices, the local state, the intermediaries, planners, etc.? So it's a question to all of you.
Okay, maybe we can have 2 more questions and then some responses.
Hello, my name is Mona. I'm very happy to be here today, and I've heard all these different examples. I have lived in Vienna for the last 10 years, and I'm just moving back home, so I know Vienna quite good, but I don't know a lot about the project that you showed us here today. And so yeah, we talked about also how the city of Vienna has quite a good framework, and also historically owns a lot of buildings and so on. But what I was wondering is, are there like, on another level, are there like any like alternatives to how the village or like a project, the public or common spaces are being managed? Is there like any are there like any infrastructures, tools, or spatial, I don't know, also like maybe digital measures that are being put in place to give alternatives to, let's say, like govern or manage or whatever, a city or like a part of a city on another level?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
I also have a comment and a question. The comment is that it seems to me like that in your projects, I agree with Maria that the space for participation is or for a critique of current sort of development maybe happens in open space, in the space of maybe in the ideal kind of the utopian space, or in the space of discourse, in the case of maps, in the critical discourse. But the question is really simple, actually. If you were to revisit your projects, how would you try to enhance the participatory dimension? In which of the spaces that are in between, the things that you did, or outside of the things that you did, would you embed participation? I don't know if it makes any sense, but...
One more question, yes.
Thank you for these very interesting presentations. Just a small questions. Do you think that Vienna can learn something from Kuwait or Cairo, or Kuwait can learn something from Vienna and all the...
I have to say that the case of Kuwait is very particular, because Kuwait is an emirate, and it's ruled by the royal family, and it's a very strong welfare state. So houses are provided by the state. Subsidies to energy consumption, it's quite hot country, so they have subsidies to energy, they have subsidies to oil. So in that sense, it's a bit different from the other cases. What I felt is, first, the whole management of the urban area, and I can't say city, because city for them is just a CBD. The whole thing is the country, in a way. So there's no mayor. There's no next level of administration. So the whole city is managed by the different ministries and the government. And there's no mayor, there's no sub-city level management. The other thing is that it's a strong welfare state, but it's a strong welfare state that it has not adapted in the last 50 years to what was planning in the 50s, which was the car-centric development, into what is planning now, what is sustainability now. And because the whole planning is not adapted, they kind of created this circle where, you know, if you don't have the infrastructure because you have low densities, lack of mixed use, then it's difficult to have public transport that it's efficient because there's a lot of traffic, there's low density, so you don't want to spend a lot of money in mass transit rail, and how do you connect all these people to the rail? So there's a lot of investment that is needed, but at the same time you have almost, I think, 9 to 10 years waiting list for new houses for residents. So the country is investing in works that provide houses for those resident citizens, and in a way that is also taking part of what it is, the capacity of the government to deal with that. At the same time, Kuwaitis can't access bank loans, and therefore there's no way of them getting out of the waiting lists and purchase themselves their own house, their own apartment. So what's happening now is a lot of these villas are kind of empty because the parents or grandparents died, and they're subdivided informally into different apartments, and the new generation of Kuwaitis are now living in apartments while waiting for a property or for a proper house. And these new Kuwaitis, they do want proximity to nurseries, they do want proximity to cafes, but the whole state has the old mentality of their needs are what we needed 50 years ago. So what can they learn? I think they have a lot to learn from Vienna, because they can do a lot of social housing in a way. They have this capacity to build for their own citizens. The other thing is the non-citizens, which are 2/3 of the population. And then, you know, are you providing only for your citizens? But in a way, if you're improving public space, you're also improving public space to the other 2/3. But that's also an issue. The 2/3 of the population of Kuwait are non-Kuwaitis. They're also very transitory. They stay for a few years, they move, new people come. So there's a lot of issues that, you know, I think Kuwait could learn from Vienna. In terms of participation, what participation could mean for Kuwait? A lot, because I don't think so my colleague, she wanted to do a survey to people, understanding what type of houses do they need and what type of typology and where, and they were not able to do it, not necessarily, because you also need funding. Are they funding yourself, or there's the intention from someone to fund it? And if they don't ask people what they need, they are not providing it. So I think participation means a lot, should mean a lot in Kuwait, and I think that's what is missing. Even if it's just listening to people, even if it's not yet collaboration, but at least the first step of being informed by what people really need. And then finally, what would I change in terms of my process? We've discussed a lot that we thought that a pop-up activity, like bringing a cafe into a park, bringing sofas into an empty parking space or a parking space, and sitting down and bringing kids to play the cards and occupying space and showing to people that, you know, these parking spaces or these empty plots can have easily an alternative use. That was what we thought about, but we need funding to experiment, so who knows in the future.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Verena, please.
Yes, thanks. I hope I can answer all the questions. What we learned from Cairo, I think Vienna has a problem and it's a solution on the other hand. Vienna has a strict border. It's like a city-state, you know. We are surrounded by Lower Austria, which is a complete other political way of thinking, because Vienna is since ever a socialist city. It has nothing to do with neoliberalism in no way. And so we have a strict border, and what Vienna is doing, we have, as I mentioned before, a big city growing, and we have to re-densify the city. So we don't have any urban sprawls. And I think it's, on one hand, it's a problem for a growing city not to have any metropolitan area. We don't have this. We have a border, and then it's Lower Austria. But I think it's the solution on the other hand, because we have to deal about density. We have to discuss about density with people living there. As I mentioned, we do dense new urban developments, and I think that is the answer to the climate change, you know, because we have to really we have to think about the land, how we build with it, how we deal with it, how many land do we need to provide home for new citizens. And I think it's a solution that Vienna has the strict borders on one hand. On the other hand, Vienna, Austria is a welfare state as well. And Vienna, as I mentioned, is a socialist city. And the city of Vienna is buying green land and convert it to building land, and then via competition hand it to non-profit organizations who has to enter in the competition a good project and then get the land from the city of Vienna to a small amount. It's not expensive at all, and it has nothing to do with neoliberalism. I think this is the key answer how social housing still is working in Vienna, because we have the Wohn for Wien. It's a fund which just is buying land and is doing these conversion processes, and afterwards is selling the land to really, really good projects by really, really engaged people who are not allowed to make any profit out of these real estate developments. So it's a complete different way of thinking of how to deal with real estate. You know, I think it's really a completely other way of thinking. The question of participation, as I mentioned before, we are re-densifying the cities. So our main focus is to connect new quarters with existing ones. So this is the main effort we have, is just to connect the few urban developments who are still left and connect them to the people living there, to raise the acceptance, to just explaining what is happening there, why it is happening. We have to re-densify a lot of projects owned by the city of Vienna, like this Gemeindebau. We have to re-densify them. So we have to discuss a lot that the neighborhood of each is going to transform. And this is a hard work, but I think it's a very important work, because we don't have any area to expand the city. The landlords, yeah, you asked about the landlords. So the city, as I mentioned before, it's mandatory to have subsidized housing there. So it's mandatory by law. You can't deal about it. So you have to do it. So the landlord, they are like forced to sell the building land to companies who are not allowed to make any profit out of residential development. So they have to do it like this. Otherwise, they wouldn't get any possibility to convert their green land into building land. And the Urban Renewal Office. I have like two professions. On one hand, I'm an architect. On the other hand, we are running the Urban Renewal Office for 4 districts in Vienna. And what we are doing is we are working in the existing city of Vienna. Vienna is a very dense city, and it has a very dense existing old city where a lot of people living. It's called the Gründerzeit. It was a period 100 years ago where the city was rapidly growing as well. And this is a really huge area, and there are also mainly the poor people living there, because it's very dense, it's very lack of green, there's not, it's, yeah. And we are managing that. So we are, on the other hand, in the Urban Renewal Office, we are paid by the city of Vienna to manage the existing city, to manage the public space there. So what we do is we're trying to regain public space for people again, yeah, because the existing city is mainly focused on individual cars. Although it's very, very good. It's by public transport is really, it's a very available of public transport. Nevertheless, the streets are most of the streets are really for cars. And what we are trying to do in this Urban Renewal Office is we're trying to regain the space for people living there. So we do a lot of pop-ups there. We do a lot of neighborhood gardens in the street. We say, okay, if there could park a car, there could be a bench as well. We do a lot of things, going to schools, trying to change the mindset of the next generation by making a tree in the street and say, hey, it would be cool if there could be a tree. So, and we are directly connected to our district mayors. So we have like mayors in every district in Vienna, and we are directly working together with them. So we are not only trying to change the mindset of the neighborhood, but we are trying to change the mindset of the politicians. And it's a very small step work, you know, but we really had a lot of transforming public spaces. We have right now a pop-up building which was a former parking garage, and we are using since 3 or 4 years as a public space. So we're really getting better, and we're really changing the way of thinking how we deal with public space as a community, as a neighborhood, as people living there, not parking their cars there, but living there. And I think this is the most important thing of the Urban Renewal Office. And the thing is that we are about 10 people working there. We are not only architects, we are social workers, we have a lawyer, we have a geographic. So we are really, we have a different way of thinking. We are paid by the government of Vienna for 6 years. Every 6 years we have applied for this tender again, but we don't have any budget for any projects. We are it's only us. So we are the platform. We are going out and talking to the people, and I think this is quite a really intelligent way of dealing with the connection from the politicians to the people. So we have a lot of we are in between these top-down processes from the politics, who said, okay, we are going to make a subway there, yeah. We have an area right now in Vienna. And on the other hand, we have this bottom-up. We telling the district mayor that the neighborhood likes to have this street crossed there, and they like to have a park there. And sometimes it works. Yeah, and this is really, I think this is really a wonderful work we are doing right now, and it's wonderful to see the city taking tribute and paying us doing that work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless we have something really urgent. No, okay, I will give the floor to Maria for some final comments.
Actually, we're thinking of taking the opportunity to give some responses also to some of the questions, reflecting a little bit also on what I've heard. So let me dare, try to provide an explanation of what could be neoliberal urban development. So to put it in very simple terms for me, neoliberal urban development would correspond to decisions that, well, let's say, first of all, 100%, more or less 100% market-driven development that produces or aims at producing profit only for the very few and ignores all externalities for society and for vulnerable groups, needless to say. Now, this correlates many times with, or most of the times, with car-centered development, but not necessarily. Oh, and I have forgotten to say, and not only neglecting and ignoring all externalities for society, but also in the absence of any mitigation mechanisms or redistribution mechanisms, right? Which would be basically the role of some kind of state, public hand. Now, this again correlates in many cases with car-centered development, but not necessarily, and I will bring you an example. You could have pedestrianization projects or even metro projects as neoliberal, let's put it this way, urban development, if there is no mitigation mechanism, example given against gentrification and against rising rents, which in the case of Vienna, example given, there is, because there is a cap on rents, plus additional some thousand social housing units per year. So that's just to give a very simple example of what I mean when I use these terms. Now, what can Vienna learn from Kuwait and Cairo? I would say what we can learn is that unmanaged growth, neglecting all externalities and without mitigation mechanisms, may lead to a dystopia of gated bubble cities. And that it can happen in Vienna just as well, okay, if we lose the game. It's not that Vienna or any place of the world is, doesn't have anything to do with it and it can't happen. And what can Kuwait or Cairo learn from Vienna? I would say that what Vienna can share with the world as a good lesson is that it's a threefold strategy of affordability, livability, and community that actually has brought Vienna to where it is today. And it's really these three aspects, a holistic approach and a combination of these three aspects. By affordability, it's clear what it's meant. By livability, I mean focusing on the design and the qualities of public space and realizing that the city is not in the buildings, it's in the street, and at least trying to transform public space towards more livable conditions. And community means by involving community in order to get there. Now, I would like to get into the framework and the governance that goes with it. Verena has already explained that the urban renewal offices work for, 30 years now?
50, almost.
Almost 50. As a wonderful catalyst, looking into what comes top down and bringing it into local community and putting it there for discussion and involvement, but looking also into what comes from local community and actually maturing it in a way that it can be discussed with the public hand and then also, in many cases, implemented. So imagine a place like Athens, if we had something like this in every area of Athens, what difference it would make. And I'll just bring you one example. In Athens, we don't even know who owns uncovered land, right? In many cases, we don't know who owns it. In many cases, we don't know it's used, but we don't know on which basis. Is there a legal basis? So even if the city wants to use it to do a pocket park or to do greening, you first have to find out who owns it, right? Which then means the first thing we need in Athens is data, which then means the first task that such offices would have to do in Athens would be to collect the data. So as simple as that. And then together with it go a master plan for citizen involvement that has set standards. This has been adopted by the City Council, and it sets standards for involvement processes for all kinds of urban development projects. Now, if you ask me what I would do differently, I'll tell you what I'm trying to do today, which is already different, right? If we look into climate neutrality and how do we get there, I have realized that the only way to get there is by involving local communities, focusing on the local level and involving local communities. Otherwise, we can produce the most wonderful strategic papers that can be as thick as a coffee table, and we can all put them somewhere and put our coffee service on them, and that's it, right? Yeah, so this is where we stand right now. So I do hope I have answered everything, at least as far as I can see I have. Vienna is not so much into, Vienna is not so much into digitization when it comes to citizen involvement. It's not so much into digitization anyway. It has let's say there's a downside to it, and it has a good side as well. I think right now it works quite well, to be honest. And the good side of it is that you don't address digital natives only. You have still the chance of addressing wider parts of the population that still are not so comfortable with digital tools. But in a couple of years from now, I think we will be somewhere else. And last but not least, also bringing everything to Athenian context, I would like to just end with an idea of take now all of this that we've heard today, and please let's go to Eleonas and think of what could happen there with different approaches. And hoping that we will be able to develop a piece of city there that is to the benefit not only of the people that will be living there, but also to the benefit of the entire city and of the entire society. I would like to, leave us at that and reflecting about what should be done and could be done there to develop it this way. Because I have made the experience also from Vienna that when cities do not know what to do with a place and it's just empty, they will use it as a dustbin. So they will go and throw everything in there that they don't know where to put, right? And the alternative, again, is to have a vision and involve local communities and to move the other way around. So let's hope it will move this way.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Maria. That's an interesting homework. Leonas, for those of you who don't know, it's the area that starts from here and goes to the west, so it's something to take back home and reflect on this. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Verena. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Zaazaaa, very much. Thank you all for being here and participating in this panel of urban governance, spatial development, and citizen participation. We will now go out and move to the final plenary of the conference in the other room, right? Thank you very much.